Harihi Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Betty, why is this conversation that we're studying so important for us? Why are we studying it?
I'm studying it because it shows us how to understand Shastra, how to understand the scriptures and their meaning, not speculate and...
Very good answer. Thank you. Yana? What else have we covered so far in the last 4 days?
In the last 4 days?
Well, 4 classes, so all of them together, in general.
Well, so far, well, to be honest,
I mean, you don't have to say everything, just one thing.
Okay, well, last time we talked about what our attitude should be towards different beliefs and religions. How we should act, respond to people with different beliefs.
Right. Good. Chandrika, what you got? And now I can see you. You're not just a blank face.
No.
I can't read with these, but
I got a gulab jamun and a sweet rice.
Oh, you have a sugar coma currently.
We should focus on the principles,
not
on the details.
Very good. See that? Even with a sugar coma, my little sister, she knows. Sanjay, Prabhu. Anything. Nothing stuck out? He's cheating, he's looking at the book.
Actually, Jiva, last year we discussed about inclination, Jiva, love, inclination, and cognition. These 2 points explains here that every living entity have this nature.
Right, same nature.
Same nature, and when living entities they can be polluted by different philosophies, atheism or Vaidism or some.
Right.
And this kind of things can cover nature of jiva, and the jiva can easily develop love, develop, how to say.
So the natural tendency can be reawakened if we follow the proper process. Good, thank you. I won't pick on anyone else, but if anyone else wants to add anything.
I like the definition of rasa. Rasa is attraction towards an object without prior processing of the intelligence.
Yeah.
It is intense attraction.
Yes. Very good.
Rasa or raga?
I think it's raga. Yeah. Yes, very good. Okay, so we will continue. Concerning different expressions of reverence, in India, the worship sits on an asana, and after performing nyasa and pranayam begins the worship. The Muslim faces towards Mecca and worships 5 times a day by bowing down. The Christian kneels down with folded hands and with humility praises the Lord in either church or house. Each country has its particular religious rules concerning proper dress, food, purity, and impurity. So this was covered before, how in different countries, different cultures, there are different ways to dress, different types of food, different languages that are spoken. Even within the language, like English, for example, there are many different colloquial generations that use different types of slang, etc. But each, in its purity, is actually giving respect to God in its own way. Continuing. If you examine the different religions, you will notice different rituals. You will also discover the different conceptions concerning the object of worship. Some people, overcome with devotion in their hearts, establish the form of the Lord in their soul, in their mind, and finally in the external world. Understanding that the form is non-different from the Lord within, they worship that form. In some religions, because of the greater emphasis on logic, the worshiper simply forms a conception of God in the mind and worships it. The worshiper does not accept an external form of God. In reality, however, all these conceptions are forms of the Lord. Then we have footnote 15. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, 27th chapter. This is verses 9 and 12. A twice-born person should worship me, his worshipable Lord, without duplicity, offering appropriate paraphernalia in loving devotion to my deity, or a form of me appearing on the ground, in fire, in the sun, in water, or within the worshipper's own heart. So all these forms are accepted. And then verse 12. The deity form of the Lord is said to appear in 8 varieties: stone, wood, metal, earth, paint, sand, the mind, or jewels. So the point is that we can conceive of the Lord in many different ways, but the important part is that we actually understand the connection, the relationship. If we just build a statue of something and worship it, like some people do to Mickey Mouse or the Merrill Lynch bull that's outside of Wall Street, people actually go and pray to that so that their stocks yield good returns. Yeah. You know how like on brass statues, wherever people touch it a lot, it becomes shiny? Yeah, there's a part of it where like people go and they basically try to get blessings from this golden cow to get more money. It's funny if you know the story in the Bible of the golden cow. But yeah.
I'm asking if it works.
Oh, I don't know if it works or not. The results of the yields on their investments probably has nothing to do with that bull and more to do with karma, but who knows. So it's not that we just come up, because it says in the mind is okay, but it's not that we just come up with our own conception of what God should be and then worship that. It's that we understand from the Shastra who the Lord is, and then using those guidelines, we form that picture in our mind. So there are many descriptions of Krishna, of Vishnu in the Shastra. Every time someone sees him, there's a long description of the color clothes he's wearing, his skin color, the shapes of his eyes, the types of earrings he has, the types of necklace and garlands that he's wearing. All of this is very vividly described. So if we can picture that form in our mind, then that is bona fide. And if we actually see that in the proper mood, with the proper relationship, then that's bona fide. Because even if we're just seeing that form, if we're not seeing it in the right mood, then we're not actually worshiping God. We're seeing a proper description of God in our mind, but there's no worship there. Continuing. According to language differences, different religions call God by different names. The religions have different names, and the languages used during worship are also different. Because of these 5 differences, those are on the opposite page, differences of teacher or prophets, the differences in worshipers' mentality and consequent expressions of reverence, difference in procedures of worship or ritual, difference in conceptions of God, and difference in God's name and statements due to different languages. So those were covered in those paragraphs. Because of these 5 differences, it is only natural that various religions will appear quite different. However, it is improper and detrimental to argue over these differences. So improper and detrimental to argue over the differences. If you go to someone else's place of worship, you should think, the people are worshiping my Lord, but in a different way. Because of my different training, I cannot comprehend this system of worship. However, through this experience, I can deepen my appreciation for my own system of worship. The Lord is only one, not 2. I offer respect to the form I see here and pray to the Lord in this new form that He increase my love for the Lord in His accustomed form. Right? So we're understanding that these people, they're worshiping the same God as we are, and that we can also offer our respect to that God, knowing that there is only one, and we can pray that in this form that the Lord can show mercy to us, that we grow further attachment to the form that we are accustomed to, the one that we have experience of. Footnotes. Yes.
So this is a typical understanding for the old ancient world. I was reading something from one Greek, very famous Greek historian, Herodotus or something. So he describes how he went to some city which had different religions from his native ones, and he saw how they worshipped Baal, some other people. And he thought, this is my God, but they worship it in a different way. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But then, when Christianity came,
When
Christianity came and was established by the Emperor Constantine as the state, the religion of the Roman Empire, then things changed. There was a significant shift in understanding. So people started, Christians, they started introducing the concept that this is not the same God. Don't fool yourself. You're not worshiping
that's a false God.
This is actually false God. Yes. It's actually Satan. So it's quite different from. And if you read Bhagavad Gita, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna never says that unless you worship me, you go to hell.
He doesn't. That's true.
Krishna says, Urdvam gachanti sattvasta. If you're established in the mode of goodness, you go to the good place. It doesn't matter if you worship me or if you don't worship me, or I don't care. But if you're a good person, you go to a good place. If you're a bad person, and this is the criteria, sattva, rajas, tamas, then you go to hell.
Yeah.
But it's not connected to this narrative story that you have to believe. The time I was born in Mathura, in the prison of Kamsa, and then I appeared with 4 arms, then it changed into 2, and then my father took me, he crossed you. If you don't believe in this narrative, then you're done.
That's it, that's the only way.
That's it. No, it's quite, fortunately, the story is a bit more sophisticated than that.
Yeah.
So
And when we actually read some of these philosophies, it's not hard to see the principles are actually the same.
Yeah.
The details can vary drastically, of course, but the primary goal of all of the religions is the same.
But it just depends on whether the followers are Kanishtas, Madhyamas, or Uttamas. Usually the Kanishtas are...
And the leaders too.
Yeah. Sorry?
The leaders also,
Yeah.
depends on what they are.
Usually Kanishtas are very proud and they are quite aggressive in establishing their own understanding. And the Madhyamas are a bit more understanding and accommodating. And the Uttamas, they see everything in connection to Krishna.
Right. Yeah, they just accept everyone as devotee. Good, thank you. Footnote 16. The Lord of Lakshmi, the Lord of Sita, is non-different from the Supersoul. Therefore, I surrender myself completely to the lotus-eyed Rama. This is a statement of Hanuman. Continuing. Those who do not follow this procedure, but instead criticize other systems of worship and show envy, hatred, and violence, are worthless and foolish. The more they indulge in useless quarreling, the more they betray the very goal of their religion. However, consider the following point. No, before we get to that part, who wants to guess why? Where were we? Why that, if they're doing that, engaging in the useless quarreling, the more they do that, the more they betray the very goal of their own religion. Anyone know why? Well, what's the goal of our Chandrika? You were nodding, yes? Oh, sorry, I saw you nod yes and I thought you wanted to answer.
No.
I'm sorry. So why is it that the more we indulge in criticizing these other religions, the more we betray the goal of our own religion? What's the goal of our religion?
Which one?
Sanatan Dharma.
Satisfy Krishna.
Satisfy Krishna. Okay. And we just learned that all of these different philosophies are geared towards satisfying Krishna. So if we're criticizing another philosophy, what are we doing?
We are disturbing the path of some living entities towards satisfaction of Krishna.
That's one thing. We're disturbing the path of these living entities who are on their path. But what we're also doing is we're blaspheming a bona fide scripture. Even though it's not being properly followed, we're still blaspheming something that God established to lead others. So if we're criticizing that, then we're criticizing God himself. Right? Because his word, his name, his pastimes are all non-different. Yeah.
If you read actually the conversation between Mahaprabhu and Champkazi, and if you take this as a representative of Mahaprabhu's opinion for all these Abrahamic faiths, because that's, I think, that's how we should take it. There you could fairly kind of, you could think that he's criticizing one of the scriptures, in the sense that he's pointing out that it is recent and it's inconsistent and it's full of mistakes. Not full of mistakes, but there are quite some discrepancies there. And then Champkazi responds by admitting, yes, it is true, we know that, but these are tradition. Something similar to the Mayavadi sannyasis when they were converted by Mahaprabhu. So, how about that? Is this a criticism? Or?
That I think we're going to get to, because it says there is an exception to this rule.
Yeah.
And I don't think Lord Chaitanya broke that rule. But as far as I remember, and it's been a little bit, it's been a few years since I read that, but the impression I got, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because it's, like I said, it's been a while, I was understanding that Mahaprabhu was talking more about the interpretation of the philosophy which was misapplied, and not necessarily the way, he did say it was more recent. I got that part, but I'd have to look at it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you know specific.
I think he meant the scripture itself.
Okay.
It's deficient.
Yeah, I'll have to look again. Because also when he preached to what were they, the 7 horsebacked, when they were on the way to Vrindavan, and he basically converted them also. He was only preaching according to Quran to them. Who was he traveling with? He was passed out in ecstasy, and they thought that they were robbing him, and there was a whole scene.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah,
and then when he woke up, he ended up preaching to him. Yeah, so there are a number of examples of that. But yeah, it's worth looking more into. Thank you. So continuing. However, consider the point. Consider the following point. Although it is worthless to criticize a mere difference in religious system, here's the exception. It's right here. I thought it was like next page, but it's immediately. If people see a real fault, they should not simply accept it. Here's footnote 17. There are 5 branches of irreligion, right? This is why it's important for us to know the difference between religion and irreligion. So we don't criticize the religion aspect of religious practices. But if irreligion exists, and we can actually determine that it does based on what's about to be described here, that aspect of it we can criticize, but only under certain circumstances. So continuing. There are 5 branches of irreligion, appropriately known as irreligion, religious principles for which one is unfit, pretentious religion, analogical religion, and cheating religion. One who is aware of real religious life must abandon these 5 as irreligious. Religious principles that obstruct one from following his own religion are called vidharma. Religious principles introduced by others, means unauthorized people, are called paradharma. A new type of religion created by one who is falsely pruned and who opposes the principles of the Vedas is called upadharma. And interpretation by one's jugglery of words is called chaladharma. A pretentious religious system manufactured by one who willfully neglects prescribed duties of his orders of life is called abhas. But if one performs the prescribed duties of his particular ashram or varna, why are they not suffering to mitigate all material distresses? That's Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto, 15th chapter, verses 12 to 14.
Not sufficient. You said suffering.
Did I misread that?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Why are they not sufficient to mitigate all material distresses? Did I say suffering?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for catching me. Yeah, I did say that, didn't I? Why are they not sufficient to mitigate all material distresses? Yes. 17. Okay, continuing. It is beneficial if they attempt to correct the fault in a proper way. Thus, Mahaprabhu, in discussing with Buddhists, Jains, and impersonalists, led them to the proper path. The devotees of Lord Chaitanya should always take the Lord's behavior as the proper example to follow. So if we can successfully bring people, because our deal, one of the unique things about our philosophy is that it synthesizes anything that's incomplete. So all of these different bona fide religions that are, we can call them incomplete in the sense that the principles are there. They may even describe what the relationship is between you and the goal, but the map has some areas that aren't clarified. There are some uncharted territories, right, we can say. And what we have is a way to fill in that map for them. So if we do that, if we say, okay, no, your map is fine, there it is, and then synthesize what their misunderstandings or just missing information, then we can do that, as Lord Chaitanya has done. And if, while doing that, the person becomes attracted to the process of bhakti proper, then that is very good. Yeah.
some years back in 2003 I was taking this communication course, this communication.
Oh yeah.
And precisely this paragraph was, but not this one, the previous one.
The
Was
verse.
The previous paragraph before this one.
Oh, okay.
If you see, hey, the worship,
Oh, it's a.
then you should know this is your. Yeah, this was displayed in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked us to, could you please, guess who wrote this? And there were like 5 or 6 different authors.
Choices, multiple choice.
Multiple choice, and one of them was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but we didn't choose Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we chose some other people, because we didn't know who wrote this.
Yeah.
And sounded kind of new agey.
Sure.
So we
Without
thought,
the second part.
right. And that was it. So they just briefed us on this. They told us, we see you are in Maya. And,
Oh, Hare Krishna.
This is how our Acharya tells us that we're supposed to look at it. And that was it.
Context.
They didn't quote the next paragraph.
Context is important for proper
Right,
communication.
And it took me like 5, 6, 7 years until I actually read Caitanya Siksamrita and I went, aha, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I also saw this, the first paragraph floating on social media. Only the first.
Yeah, of course.
Without
Yeah.
the second. So,
As we mentioned in maybe the first or second day of this course, when we approach Shastra, we have to approach it in a proper way, proper mood. We don't pick things that go along with what we currently believe, our conditioned behavior. We have to find out what the constitutional thing to do is. Not in the Constitution, but our constitutional nature, right? And then we have to change our conditioned behavior to come in line with our constitutional nature. So, no matter which side of the argument we're on, whether we are pro-criticizing other religions or anti-criticizing other religions, we can pick either one paragraph or the other of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, take it way out of context. And one side will say, you should always criticize because they're always engaged in irreligion. And the other side will say, no, there's always something that they're doing right, so you should never criticize, right? But Lord Chaitanya gave us this synthesis of that there is something always right with what they're doing as long as they're actually going toward God. There also there are areas that are incomplete, and if you can successfully synthesize those without discouraging others from their own path and without blaspheming a bona fide literature, then that's okay. But we have to be careful of both of those things. As Tulsi Prabhu pointed out, we don't want to discourage someone who's actually on a path, coming from where they're going and actually getting closer to God. We don't want to discourage that. And we also don't want to criticize a bona fide path. So we have to be careful of that. So yes, when we read these quotes, both parts are very important, and we have to see how both exist. Because there are people who will argue that 2 different people wrote that, or, or only half of it's right and you're misunderstanding the other half, no matter what side you're on. But both sides are absolutely correct, and we have to understand how both of them are correct and why, right? And if we don't understand that, we risk either stifling someone's devotional growth by taking away their very little flickering faith, or blaspheming literature, which is in pursuit of the Vedic version, which is an offense to the holy name if we do that. So, as long as we know that, if we understand that, then we won't commit those offenses. Anything else on that? I can't keep doing that. But I can't see anyone's face like this. But I can't see the words with them on. It's like on and off. It's
yeah, you should put it like this.
on a string. Yeah. Yes.
What is this religious principles for which one is on feet? Why is irreligious?
Oh, because you're not ready for it. So if you don't know how to properly do it. So let's say, for example, that a kindergartner really wants to do calculus. Just really, really wants to do calculus. Doesn't want to learn how to add and subtract, doesn't want to learn how to multiply. No, I want to go straight to calculus. Well, calculus involves addition and multiplication. If you don't know how to do that, You can't understand calculus. That's it. So if you're insistent on just jumping ahead, you're not qualified for it. That's considered irreligion. Because although ignorance is, how is it worded in Sri Upanishad? So-called knowledge is, what is it, worse?
It's worse than simple ignorance.
Yeah, but how is it exactly worded? What's the English?
One should know knowledge, side by side knowledge and ignorance. Yeah.
It's something about ignorance being dangerous, but even more so is so-called knowledge. But it's not dangerous. I don't know the word.
Going to deeper darkness.
Are you looking it up? You're Googling something else? Anyway.
Those who are ignorant, they go to the darkest ignorance. Those who are in knowledge, they go to a darker.
Yes. How is it? Go ahead. You found it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, read it. You want me to read it?
You read.
Those who engage in the culture of nescient activity shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So, in other words, they're connected to something that's legitimate, but they don't know how to use it. So they consider that they're doing it, but they're actually not. So it looks bad for the system because the person's a representative of it, and it also is bad for the person because he can't derive proper benefit from it. Also, we can look at the verse in Bhagavad Gita where it says that it's better to perform your own duties imperfectly than to engage in another's perfectly. And the reason that is true is because I have a very specific conditioned nature. I have all these different layers of goodness, passion, and ignorance bound around me. And when we engage our specific nature in Krishna service, those dissolve. And we can gradually see reality. Just because I can do something properly doesn't mean that it's actually going to help me spiritually. So let's say I can name an activity, any activity. Play soccer. Let's say I can play soccer and I can do it really well. I can score goals left and right. But it's not part of my conditioned nature. I'm not actually purifying that. And so it's not getting me closer to Krishna, right? So even though technically, externally, it looks like I'm doing a really good job of it, if it's not actually purifying my conditioned nature, then I'm not making any advancement. But one might say, yeah, but he's scoring all the goals and we're winning. But that's a material result, so it doesn't matter. What we want are spiritual results. So if it's not within our conditioning, we don't engage in it, right? So it's not that everyone should fight, it's that kshatriyas should fight, and only if they're protecting, because kshatriya means to liberate others from harm, right? Kshat means harm, and triya, trayate, to liberate. So the nature of the kshatriyas isn't to fight, it's to protect others. And if that means that they have to fight those who are not behaving properly, then they'll fight. But they don't fight just to fight, right? So, even in engaging according to our nature, it has to be done properly, not just according. So, kshatriyas, sometimes they have to fight, so it's not just they go out picking fights, looking for people to beat down. Like, okay, that person's not very skilled, I could definitely beat him up and then just start pounding on people. No, there's a system to it, right? And so not only do we have to follow our nature, but we have to follow our nature properly. And that is dictated by Shastra, right? But what if we don't understand Shastra? Then how do we figure it out? Are there maybe two other ways that we can determine whether what we're doing is bona fide? Shastra and maybe one with a G and maybe another one with an S? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, yeah. And the beautiful part about this is when we hear these terms, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we're actually just talking about Shastra, Shastra, and Shastra. Because the Guru is only going to instruct you based on Shastra. The Sadhu's example is based on what the Shastra has told them, and then the Shastra is Shastra directly. So if one is not connected to Shastra, one is not actually a guru. So we hear this term, it's used a lot these days, like weather guru. It means someone who's really good at predicting the weather. But that's not really what guru means. What's another one? Pandit. They use pandit a lot too in the news. You never heard that?
Pundit.
Yeah. Well, they might say, yeah. Well, there are pundits too, which is different. They use puns, I think. But yeah, these terms, a lot of terms are being used in a wrong way. And as I mentioned the other day when we were talking about sadhu sangha, the sat part of sadhu means the eternal principle. So if they're not actually connected to that eternal principle, then that's not sadhu. And just because they are a sadhu doesn't mean that we are getting the sangha, even if we're very close to them, even if we're listening attentively, even if we're writing down and memorizing what they said and repeating it. It still doesn't mean that there's actually sangha. If we are identifying with it and it is actually changing our behavior, that is sangha. Otherwise, it's just sadhu appreciation or sadhu proximity, right? And if we know what the terms actually mean and we're honest about them, then we can determine why we're not making as much spiritual advancement as we predicted that we would make. Anything else on that? Okay, we were somewhere around here. I'll just start. Devotees do not accept those religions that are filled with atheism, skepticism, materialism, pantheism, and impersonalism as real religions. They know them to be false religions, anti-religious movements, or perverted religions. And they understand that their followers are unfortunate. The devotees must try to protect the living entities from these false religions. So if people are obviously being misguided, but they have a sincerity to be properly guided, then we can gently, because we're also gently being guided, we have to appreciate that. Picture the first time you met a Vaishnava. Can you picture it? Everybody has a picture? The first time you met a Vaishnava? Now picture them giving you the entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness in the heaviest way possible to convince you that you're wrong and the process is right. How would you have taken that?
No.
Not good. Tulsi wouldn't have taken it very well. Would you have taken it well?
No.
So I imagine some people would take it well. I wouldn't have taken it well. Would you have? No? Sanjay? Maybe, but probably not. No? Maybe. Chandrika was like, yeah, lay it on me.
She met
She might appreciate that. She met you.
oranges on the street trying to
And
push
then-
Bhagavatam and everything.
These guys. Yeah, you're always in good hands with these guys because they're not going to be like, your life is a nonsense. You've been wasting your human form of life, your valuable form of human life. You have to move into the ashram immediately and, you know. Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, it's been done, but it usually doesn't go over so well. So just as we were gently guided as we are able to progress in a natural way, and as Krishna does that through us, as our sincerity increases, as we surrender unto Krishna, then He awards us reciprocally, accordingly. So we see what this person is actually sincere about. Where does their sincerity lie? What are they interested in? And we fan that spark. That's what we focus on. We don't give them the whole thing. They can't accept the whole thing. They can't understand the whole thing yet. They will in time, but whatever aspect they're appreciating, then that's what you start with, and then gradually it grows. So we can understand that followers of these different impersonalism, atheism, just absolute skepticism. We mentioned before the punk rock movement questioned authority, very skeptic. They didn't actually want to question authority to get answers. They wanted to question whether anybody was their authority, and their answer was no. Nobody's my authority. They just want complete anarchy. And so that doesn't work out. So if we meet these people, we can understand what aspects they are attracted to, and then we can gradually bring them to understand the principles of Krishna consciousness without overwhelming them with the details immediately. Yes?
It's very interesting that our philosophy is very liberal because it accommodates everyone.
Yes.
You have in Bhagavatam, Brahman, Paramatma Bhagavan, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, man, whatever you want, how you want to approach the world. The world is very
Merciful.
merciful, he accommodates, and then also we have also in Bhagavatam, those who are attracted, they cannot conceive anything higher than material form. For them there is the universal form.
Yeah. Mhm.
And Krishna accepts all these worshippers.
Yeah.
Although there is hierarchy there. And also we have so many jnanis, yogis, karmis, everybody is welcome. And at the same time, it is not wishy-washy because there is very clear understanding who is the pure devotee, what is the proper concept of Godhead, who is God. So it's very interesting how it combines these two, because usually philosophies are either, me and Martha, either conservative or liberal.
Yeah.
And we're both.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It's very amazing. Yeah, because it's for everyone, but at the same time, if you want the topmost result, then you have to do a very specific thing. And our process accommodates the whole thing. Wherever you're coming from, you can get from there to the topmost.
The topmost is very clearly defined.
Yes.
And there is no compromise there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
Which you have to respect, because in everything else in life, even in material life, if you don't follow a proper process, you do not get the perfect result. Right? There are so many. I wanted to say this the other day when Ishwar Chandra was asking those questions, because I know he has seen these pictures. Sometimes you see a photograph of, there's like a cake that someone made online, and then the parents want to make this cake for their kid, and they're like, yeah, I can do that. And then so they make, they follow the instructions, and it looks like an abomination of, like it looks nothing like it, right? So there's like, let's say a famous cartoon character shaped cake, right? And it's like, there it is. And then someone's like, oh, I can do that, and they do it, and it just like looks like a blob with like, it looks like gore, like the cartoon character looks like they got beat up and like just left on the street, and it's terrible. And it's because they didn't follow the same, they followed the same instructions, but they didn't follow the same process. They didn't understand the relationship between the ingredients, and it's, anything that we encounter is like that, even in the material world. So it's no surprise that if we're not following the spiritual process properly, we're not going to get the same result. We might get a similar-ish looking result. We're going to get the beat up version of what we actually are looking for. But the good news is, if we fail, we just keep trying, and eventually we'll get it right. Some philosophies disagree with that. They think that no, you can only try it once, and if you fail, then it sucks to be you, because you're going to eternally pay for that.
Imagine what kind of God is this who
yes,
mistakes.
And that's the thing, is God isn't really like that. So there's an example where we can see a flaw in the philosophy, and we can gently and easily explain that to people. I've done it before. It's not always easy, because people with Lokika Shraddha can have very strong, not deep faith, but strong faith. And even if you say something like, doesn't that seem a little strange that God, who is all compassionate, all merciful, would give you a pass-or-fail course? And not only would it be a pass-or-fail course, but depending on where you are born, if you're even actually born, or if you're actually killed before you're properly born, there are many circumstances where you don't come in contact with a person that can actually tell you about God. right? And then there are other circumstances where you are born into a family that's all they talk about. So how does that work? How is it both simultaneously a pass or fail course and nobody's starting on the same grounds? Some people are destined to fail immediately from the get-go, and some people are given everything they need. God's not like that. If we actually understand who God is and how He is, He wouldn't do such a thing. So then, these people, they come up with deism. They say, no, well, of course He's not like that. He's very merciful, He's very compassionate, but He just doesn't have the power to change anything in the material world. Well, God can do anything. He can change it. He chooses not to because we wanted this. Right? So there are things that they can't accommodate. But the things that they do have, the strong faith, even though it's not very deep, that's a good thing. It can be fanned. And as that increases, then it should become clear to them that there are aspects of their philosophy that aren't quite whole. But we have to be very careful in how we... I'm guilty, especially when I first became an aspiring devotee, of blaspheming other literatures and people on their different spiritual paths. My own family, actually. But we have to be wary of it all. I actually had an argument with my sister. She's a born-again Christian, and I was just quoting the Bible to her. And she didn't know the Bible very well, and I knew it better than she did. And she got upset with me, and she just kept changing the subject. So she would bring up an argument, I'd defeat her according to the Bible. And then she would just bring up another argument, not acknowledging that she was defeated. And I'd get frustrated. And then I said, and I didn't mean to blaspheme the Bible itself, but I was blaspheming the many translations that lost all of the substance, the ways that it was washed over and hidden. And so I was saying, this is complete crap. Not the Bible itself, but the presentation. And she became upset. And I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been engaging in that. But I was 17, and 17-year-olds like to argue. Do you guys like to argue? You're pretty young.
Not really.
No, that's great. Did your parents teach you good manners?
No.
No.
I mean, so-so.
So-so.
If the circumstances need you to argue and defend yourself, then yeah. But
Okay.
just out of the blue, not really.
Good, good. You too? Same? Nice. Victor? Same? Nice. I guess Bulgaria is a pretty good birth.
Well, I like to argue.
Huh?
I always like to argue.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Bulgarian.
Yeah. I mean, you're a lawyer.
He's the old one.
Hmm?
The old one.
The old one.
Old Bulgarian.
Oh, so is it a generational thing maybe, do you think? Because I met a lot of Bulgarians, most of them like to argue. But these young ones, they're like, nah, we're cool. Maybe it's a generational thing, who knows? Are you from the same area? No.
No. We're
Okay.
from Pandavas area.
You are?
Yeah.
They're from Vratsa?
Montana.
Huh?
Montana.
Montana. That's where Matunga's from.
Yeah.
I've not been to Montana.
Well, there's not much to see.
No?
In Mexico.
Are there mountains?
Yeah, a bit
There should be.
further away.
They're further away. We have Montana in America. It's probably not as cool as Montana. Yeah. Yeah, so we have to be careful. I figured back then, it was my duty because I like to argue and I'm engaging that in Krishna service. That was absolutely the way I saw it, right? I didn't see it as, oh, I'm giving my sister reasons to doubt her own bona fide path of religion, and I'm simultaneously blaspheming a bona fide yet diluted form of a pure religion. I didn't see that. I saw it as my duty. I like to argue. We are to use everything that we have in Krishna service. I have argument, so I'm going to do it. So I absolutely thought I was doing Krishna service there. So as we become more, I'm not saying I've become more mature, but as we become more mature, as we understand through the mercy of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, not through our own intellectual prowess or capabilities, as the scripture is revealed to us through the process by no effort of our own aside from deciding to accept the mercy, we're able to see and understand how to properly behave in any given circumstance. Our understanding of spirituality evolves, and we stop doing things that are actually detrimental, that we think are, no, this is what I'm supposed to do. We start seeing, oh, actually, I wasn't supposed to do that. Shouldn't have done that. I won't do it again, hopefully. Right? This is what our process is meant to be like. That gradually we are to see the faults, our faults, not everyone else's. That's another thing. I was and I still am, very good fault finder. I can find a fault anywhere. And fault finding is okay, and you can engage that in Krishna service if you're finding your own faults and then correcting them. Not finding your own faults and then getting really depressed about it and it being counterproductive and you can't get anything done because, oh, I'm the worst in the world. Not that kind of finding your own faults, but finding your own faults and correcting them. Okay, I know I do this and I shouldn't do it. How do I do this the right way? And then we figure it out through Shastra, through the examples of the sadhus, and through the instructions of the Guru. What we don't do, or we shouldn't do, is find everyone else's faults and say, you know what your problem is? You do this, and if you did this instead, it would solve it. And that's my service to Krishna, because I just told him how to become perfect. Nope, that's not how that works. That's not how you engage fault finding. If you happen to be put in a position of management, and you can tactfully help people recognize their own faults and how to rectify those faults, then you can also use that to help others. You can fault find with others, but not in the accusatory way, not in the, this is your problem, you need to do this. No, it's, you help people figure out what it is they need to work on, and then you give them tips from the Shastra of how to successfully overcome those faults. That's how one engages fault finding in Krishna service. But until we know that, then we just, do what we think we know and tell people they're all idiots. Which makes us non-different from the born-again Christians who say that everybody else is going to hell. Right? So if we're doing that, you can, there's arguments that one could be worse than the other, and there's arguments that the other can be worse. So either way, we shouldn't do it. That's the point. Okay. Pure love is the eternal function of the soul. Now this was said before. This is what Sanjay Prabhu was saying when he was giving, before we started class. This is the eternal function of the soul. Every soul has the same nature, the same tendency. That's to love God, right? Oh, I keep doing the wrong thing now. I go to look up and then this hurts. Pure love is the eternal function of the soul. Footnote 18. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.7. I'm going to read it again because it's super important. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. Now this pertains directly to our conversation with Trilokanath Prabhu here, when we were talking about better to perform your own duties, even if imperfectly. So even if I'm doing something perfect that's not in my nature, or even if I'm doing something in my nature that is perfect, externally, means it's my nature and I'm doing it and I'm getting the proper result. If it's not invoking love of Godhead, provoking attraction to the message of the personality of Godhead, then it's useless labor. What's it going to do? It's going to get me to the heavenly planets. Then what? I'm going to spend all of my pious credit. It's going to take a long time, but I'm definitely going to spend it all. And then I'm back down here. So what was the point of it? And then I got to do it again. If I want to go back up there, I got to do the whole thing all over again. I got to earn that. So that's why it's useless labor. Even if we're doing the right thing in the right way, if it's not provoking attraction to the message of the personality of Godhead, it's useless labor. Because that's the eternal function of the soul. The eternal function of the soul isn't to figure out one's conditioned nature and do it materially properly. It's to figure out one's conditioned nature and engage it to actually reawaken our original consciousness, to redirect our consciousness. Continuing. Although the above-mentioned 5 differences may exist in a religion, the real religion is pure love. So that's the principle of every religion, the primary. Everything else is secondary. This is the final goal of religion. Let us not quarrel over external differences. If the goal of a religion is pure love, then the rest is adjusted. So even if someone's partially misguided within their religion, if they focus on pure love, then everything else is going to be adjusted. Whether it's just being a really good follower of that particular religion or converting to a religion that is maybe more helpful to them. However, and then here's the list again: atheism, skepticism, polytheism, materialism, pantheism, and impersonalism are, by their very nature, contrary to love. This will be shown in later chapters of this book. So let's go through this list, actually. Atheism, that's an obvious one. It's obvious why that one's contrary to love, right? Do we need to discuss that one? Atheism. Skepticism. Why is skepticism considered contrary to love?
Because in order to develop love, you have to have from conviction that is worth it, the endeavor that this is the proper object of love, and skepticism defies this.
Yes. Okay, that's good.
Defies everything actually. There is no narrative that stands.
Good.
Skepticism.
Good, thank you. Anyone else have any ideas of why? Why? What was it?
Skepticism.
Why skepticism is contrary to love?
Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, for a doubtful soul there is no happiness neither in this life nor in the next.
Good, good. Anyone else have any further reasons? These are all very good reasons. They're enough.
I mean, I have something, but it's like connected to
That's okay.
what this is. I've heard that some emotions and some beliefs, they harden the heart of a devotee, so that's...
Harden the heart.
Yeah, the heart must be soft so you can appreciate it.
Good, good.
You can connect.
Lots of good answers. Anything else? I'm going to read this, not the first sentence, because the first sentence is the obeisances, but there are countless philosophies, but although attempting to reach the truth, they are all incomplete and mutually conflicting, being generated from illusory premises. If we're skeptical, that means we're not accepting authority. That means we're accepting ourselves as our own authority. That means it's going to be misguided. It's going to cause an unnecessary disturbance in society, as Srila Rupa Goswami puts it. So it's contrary to love, because how can you actually love something if you refuse to actually get to know it? So I can't love you if I say, do not tell me anything about you. And if anybody else wants to tell me something about you, I'm not going to listen. I can't actually know you, so how am I supposed to love you, right? It's impossible. So all of these All of these reasons listed are valid. So skepticism. Polytheism. Why is polytheism contrary to love by nature?
Because it's fruitive. By definition, it's fruitive.
It's fruitive. Oh, because mostly the reason why people are polytheists is because they want to fulfill their... Okay. It's a good reason. Anything else?
Polytheism means like there's a lot of
It means there are many gods.
and many gods.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it because God is one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So, yeah, pure love is for God, and God is one. So,
it's not natural for the soul to connect in many.
yes. Good. Materialism. That's a pretty easy one.
There is no true love in the material.
That's true. Why? Because the nature of love is eternal. And the material world's not. So there's no true love in the material world. Pantheism. These are people who believe that God is everywhere. Everything is God. They're kind of like the... I mean, he is in everything, as this Brahman aspect. But pantheists, they're not seeing a singular God in these things. They're actually seeing these things as God. So that also, there's no relationship, so there's no love. And impersonalism, oh, the worst. It's contrary to love. Why?
There is no one to love.
Yeah, what are you going to love an object? There's no relationship. There's no relationship there. Objects are usually meant to serve something or someone, right? Otherwise, an object is useless. It has to have some function towards some being. So all this will be shown in later chapters of the book. We will stop here unless there are any questions about what we covered today. No? Okay. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.